Hello and welcome to another episode of the Project Purple podcast. I'm Dino Varelli, founder and CEO of Project Purple and the host of the Project Purple podcast. We have another interview for you coming up with a very special guest after a few quick updates. We are on pace for another record year, which is just, it's a blessing and amazing. And I just want to thank everyone who has supported, donated, or participated in a Project Purple event in 2023. You guys allow us to do all the great things that we do here at Project Purple, supporting patients and providing critical research. We already have launched many of our 2024 marathon teams, which is just crazy. We're not even through the 2023 and we've already launched 2024. We also have a team back at the Colfax Marathon with our half and relay teams as well. And exciting news, we are back in the Boston Marathon as an official charity partner. This now makes us an official charity partner of the 5 largest world marathons. To learn more about all these great events, visit our website at projectpurple.org and make sure to follow us on social media to stay up to date on all things Project Purple. Without further ado, let's meet our guest coming to us all the way from Oakland, California, author and pancreatic cancer survivor, Anna Brazel. Anna, welcome to the Project Purple podcast.
Thanks, Dino. It's nice to be here.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time. I know we were playing kind of get to know each other. This is the first time you and I meeting. I know you're very active on social with regards to what you've been doing and everything that you have going on in your life. And I get really excited when we bring people that I've never met that have been, touched by this thing called pancreatic cancer. And we have this opportunity here on the podcast. As I was saying, we're almost up to 300 episodes, and it's just awesome when we can share stories. And as you mentioned, episodes of what people have experienced with pancreatic cancer. And this is why we do what we do. This community of people that are touched by this disease. And so I'm really excited to hear your story firsthand and be able to help you kind of guide it through on this podcast. So with that, I'm going to hand the mic over to you. As I mentioned before we hit record, this is kind of your opportunity to kind of share with our community and the audience listening or watching, your background with pancreatic cancer. And as I said before we hit record, you can stay as high level as you want, or you can get as deep in the weeds. And with that, the microphone is yours, Anna.
Okay, thanks. Well, before I had pancreatic cancer, I had bladder cancer. And it all started Father's Day, 2022. And I had blood in my urine for 3 days. And I hadn't had blood in my urine for decades. So I messaged my primary care physician, who said, I got a urinalysis set up for you. Come on in. But I was actually going out of town. So I didn't go in. And while I was out of town, the blood went away. So I came home on a Sunday and I thought, hey, I'm in good shape. But then I thought I better go get that urinalysis. So I did. And I was very glad that I did, because it showed that my white and red blood cells were way out of whack. I mean, just astronomical. So that got me an appointment, a referral to a urologist. And but before I went to the urologist, my primary, who's just a wonderful, wonderful doctor, said, I think I'm going to get you a CT and an MRI. And I was like, sure, fine. So I'd never had either before and had both. And they both came back showing that I did have a mushroom-shaped tumor in my bladder. And I also had a spot on my pancreas head and a spot on my pancreas tail. So that was pretty heart-stopping. But I met with the urologist pretty quickly, and he pretty quickly whittled the mushroom-shaped tumor out of me, which was cancerous. And right after that surgery, I got flooded with, my bladder got flooded with something that included chemo. So I was pretty well taken care of bladder-wise. And I've had 3 or 4, probably 3 cystoscopies, which is how they look at your bladder after that. And my bladder cancer is fine. It has not come back. And my doctor is pretty happy with that. Well, I'm pretty happy also. But we had the bladder, we had the pancreas spots to take care of. So my doctor referred me to the University of California, San Francisco, UCSF, which I had found out was like ranked 15th in the nation for cancers, according to U.S. News and World Reports. So I got referred to a surgeon. I saw him via Zoom. It was all done over Zoom. About 2 weeks after my bladder surgery. That's when they thought I was healed enough. So met with him and gave him the rundown. He saw the CT scans, he saw the MRI, and he said, "Well, you need a real diagnosis." I mean, it looked like cancer to me, and from everything I'd been reading before that meeting, it sure didn't look good. So I had another CT scan at UCSF, and then I actually had to have 2 diagnostic surgeries. The one where they go through your throat to carve out the cells. The first one came back inconclusive. And that was about 2 months after the first meeting with the surgeon. So that came back inconclusive, which I knew was possible. So I said to the surgeon, who was a different surgeon, I said, "So you want me to come back in 3 months or so? Do I need to let it grow?" And he said, "No, I want to see you next week." So the week after that, I was back in surgery, and it came back the next week. He called us up, and my husband and I were both on the cell phone. And when a doctor starts by saying, "Unfortunately," it's all over. So I had cancer. I had pancreatic cancer. And they didn't really give me a stage at that point. They said, "We'll know more after surgery." But it took about 2.5 months before I got the surgery. And I had surgery earlier this year, and they removed my entire spleen and 2/3 of my pancreas. So they removed the tail, the middle and the tail that had the real spot on it. They left the head, so I have 1/3 of a pancreas, and that spot on there, which they believe is a N.E.T, a slow-growing neuroendocrine tumor. So, and they've never been concerned about it, and they're still not concerned about it. So, but I am. I mean, I always ask, like, "What's going on there?" And it's like, "Oh, it's okay."
So I got a question real quick, because you just mentioned some key information. So they confirmed it was pancreatic cancer, and then you go in for, I would assume, the Whipple is what you're describing.
No.
So was it a pancreectomy where they just chop the tail and take out? Yep. Okay.
Yeah, they just take the spleen, they take the middle and the tail, and they also took 24 lymph nodes.
Okay, to make sure see where it spread. So was the primary tumor, or was the cancer that they took out a neuroendocrine, or the?
No, it's adenocarcinoma. So the big one by the tail. So I had 2 different types.
Wow.
And I haven't heard of that being common.
Yeah, that's why I was going to say, that's why I asked, because usually it's one or the other. It's interesting, and I'm not a physician or a researcher, but that would be very interesting to kind of deep dive into, see like how many cases show, that you have a neuroendocrine tumor on one end and then an adenocarcinoma on the other end, which is very fascinating. So to get back to then, so you have the surgery, they leave the other tumor in there on the head. Do you do chemotherapy then, I would imagine, post-surgery, or how does that work? Like, where do we go from there?
Right. I went into chemotherapy about 6 weeks later.
Okay.
So the surgeon was finished with me. I came out of surgery not needing to take any enzymes and not diabetic.
That's positive.
Except once I started chemotherapy, I became diabetic. Yeah. So had surgery. I recovered pretty quickly, and my scars are all gone, and met my oncologist. They kind of do surgery, then they do, here's your oncologist.
Correct.
So well, just as I was going to start chemotherapy on FOLFIRINOX in late February, I had a CT scan. And that scan came back with, and that was the first CT scan I'd had since the end of September, before my diagnosis. And that scan came back with kind of a shadow or a spot on my liver. And that's where my oncologist pronounced stage 4. And he also took it to the tumor board at UCSF, and it was an agreement that it was stage 4. Although I disagree. I mean, I don't feel like I have stage 4. I don't act like I have stage 4, and I really think that my bladder tumor came up because in order to show me what was going on with my pancreas.
Yeah.
I think there's some internal connection there. I know it sounds like hocus pocus or wishful thinking, but I just think that since my pancreatic cancer was found so quickly and so early that it's not stage 4. But maybe we're all like that. Maybe we all, for the first year or so, it's like, no, I'm not stage 4. But subsequent CT scans have shown the spot on the liver has gone down. And then the last scan I had, which was after I finished chemotherapy in September, the doctor wrote that the liver was unremarkable.
You know, so it's fascinating hearing you tell that, because I think as human beings, and I think the science and the medical professions have this, like, everyone has to fit a box, right? And I get it. But I also feel, to your point, like you said something very powerful there just a second ago, like you didn't feel stage 4, and just because you have the spot on your liver, you feel good, you're doing good, treatments are going well, but the medical profession has to put a label, right? Like we have to label all these patients, right? And I feel like, in my experience, sometimes that does more harm than good. Because from a psychological standpoint, and this is like what we talked a little bit about before we hit record, about survivorship, right? Like if someone, has high quality of life, has high quality of life, they're responding well to the treatments, and yeah, I guess I can see both sides, because I guess medically, everything is so finite, right? Like the facts are what they are. The data equals what things are, right? But I tend to kind of think that, in my experience, like I've met so many stage 4 people that are living and thriving at life, and statistically, like if you talk to medical profession, they're like, oh, stage 4. Wow. That, wow. But in my experience, like I've seen stage 4 people run marathons, like go on amazing adventures, climb mountains, and they're stage 4. And how can that be? Right? Like part of our society, like, wants to label, stage 4, like, oh, that's it. Like, you can't do all these other things, but then like you realize, like, you feel good, you have high quality of life, you're able to continue to do these amazing things. So I don't necessarily agree with like the medical profession on that, like on how we label people. And, I get it. I guess they have to do it to from a data standpoint, or from like the way that science is done. But I also feel like the psychological aspect of doing that, like, has such a negative push to people. And I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense to you, Anna. I mean, I don't know. I guess just given my experience, and I'm not trying to like make this about me, but again, I've seen stage 4 people do like amazing things. Like there's a guy that's going to run a marathon. There's a guy that was just running a marathon, stage 4. Like we had another guest on the podcast, doctor gave him stage 4 diagnosis, and now he's like, no evidence of disease. We just had a lady we inducted to the Project Purple Hall of Fame. She was stage 4. She did 87 rounds of Florinox. She has no evidence of disease. So I hate that we have to label people, with that, and there comes such a negative connotation, I guess, with some of those labels, I guess is what I'm trying to say here.
Well, I agree. And in that same conversation where he said, you're stage 4, that's when it's like, well, how long do I have to live? And that was my thought. And if he'd said stage 3, then I would have been, let's go party. But
yeah,
stage 4, it's like, well, I better put together a list for my husband of things he needs to know about.
Yeah, so, all those passwords.
Yeah, that's one of the lists, But if we have to be stage 4 or stage 3 or stage 2, maybe it has to be 4A through 4Z.
Correct.
And if it is 4A through 4Z, then I'm 4A.
Yeah.
I can't run a marathon just because I never could, but I'm working all day and exercising and seeing friends and cooking dinner and trying to get back to normal as much as I can. And from your podcast, I've been so inspired because I've seen more people who are like me, and I really thought, and I continue to think that I'm kind of an outlier. Since I am doing so well, because it just seems that stage 4 is supposed to be more of 4 months to live. And that's definitely me.
I'm glad you bring that up, and we can spend some time on this because I think, again, I go back to that survivor piece, and I know I use the word journey. We're going to use episode, for your episode here. And I think, not only is it staging, but it's also society as a whole has this way of, pancreatic cancer. Wow, that's bad. Like, yeah, we know it's bad. You're going through it. You've gone through the treatments, but you still live. You still do amazing things. And yeah, I use the word of a marathon. I don't know. Maybe that's just not trying to be offensive to anyone. I just think, to your point, continuing to live life the way you love to live life is like being in a marathon, right? And in the sense that, you have this label, this label of that stage 4, which medical professionals say, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be, you got to do this, you got to do that. But no, I'm going to do this on my own terms, and I'm going to live my life, continue to live my life, and keep doing the things I'm doing is winning. And that's impressive. And I think that's something that's really missed. I'm not trying to say this is not serious, but you're going through it. It's it's this time in life and the episode that you're going through. But you're still here. You're still having these huge wins and keeping doing what you're doing. And the fact that, you're tolerating this treatment very well. And that last scan showed, nothing on the liver is just amazing.
I do have to mention that it also said that my spleen was unremarkable. And I don't have a spleen. so that does give me a little pause, but I see that as good news. And I went through 12 treatments of FOLFIRINOX, and I had very light side effects. I mean, I had fatigue, and that lasted for a couple of days, and I had diarrhea, but I had no nausea, which to me is a big victory. No nausea or vomiting. and I got through the chemo pretty well.
So now where you are right now, the last scan you said looked positive. So are you on what we call, I guess, or not what we, but the medical community calls kind of a chemo break, or what is treatment looking like right now?
Right. So I ended FOLFIRINOX the end of August, and sometime in November I'm going to go on capecitabine.
Yep.
The oral chemo. So that's the next episode. And I'm also going to be in a clinical trial, which is just really taking blood. It's not going to be dosed with medicine. I was being looked at to be in a clinical trial for a new medicine with capecitabine, but my bladder cancer excluded me from that.
Mm-hmm.
So, because I was, I feel like if I am a warrior, I'm kind of like the least warrior of all, because I've had a pretty easy journey. It's my husband has just been marvelous. He's been my driver, and he's always there with me. So I haven't had to worry about a lot of stuff. So I just don't. I mean, I've put up a couple battles, and I've God knows my oncologist will say I've been persistent, and his staff they will say I've been as persistent as a warrior. But I almost feel kind of guilty, because I have been reading about other cancer patients. I mean, I keep up with them on social media, and I've been reading a lot of books, and so many people. And I saw my mother's cancer journey, and that was it's so gruesome. And I've been spared that. So I'm totally in awe of so many other people. And I kind of feel I'm at the bottom of the, Pan-Can warrior. Which is okay for me, but I would hate for someone else to feel that for themselves. One of the reasons I was interested in doing this talk with you is that I will look at it later and I'll go, oh gosh, Anna, I can see that, this is what you were thinking, and you deserve this, or let's do something different. So it's kind of like being with a shrink for an hour and a half or 45 minutes. So I'm going to look back on this and understand more about myself.
I'm going to take that last sentence, or that last phrase you just said, being with a shrink, as a compliment, as this is like therapy. Thanks, Anna. So I got a question here as I put on my shrink hat here. What was your life before all this cancer diagnosis? Like, what did you do? First of all, what was like
my background is, I have a master's degree in history. So I've been a history student all my life, and I've made my money working as a writer. I was a tech writer with IBM and a team lead, and retired in 2017, I think. And I retired to write historical fiction. So I had one book come out in 2017, and I just released last week another historical mystery, which is what I love to read and what I love to write. So I've always been a writer. I've always been a communicator, and my goal in retiring was to write 9 books. I have this series, I have these characters I love, and, I wanted to write books. And I also wanted, I wanted my husband to retire, and we wanted to relocate. And in fact, when I first had the blood in my urine, about a month earlier, we'd gone to Oregon, and I was, once we came back, I was looking at how to get mortgages. I was doing all the financial juggling of, if we put our house on the market here, then we can do this. And so we were looking at hitting the road, which once we became associated with UCSF and the excellent treatment we got there, and realized how fortunate we were to be with them. It's like, no, we want to stay, half an hour on a good day, half an hour's car trip from UCSF. So before this, I was a big planner. I had things, planned. I had hopes. I had aspirations. And with the diagnosis, it's like you really can't plan anymore. Or you can't plan big, or you can't plan long, which is the kind of planning I'm used to doing. So a big part of me was whittled away because Anna Brazel Planner is like, nope, that's not working.
Well, yeah, and I have to imagine, Anna, so thank you, first of all, for sharing that. But I've got to imagine here that if your life is a planner, and then now you're given this diagnosis, and this is a little bit of as I go back to like this stage 4 talk and with this disease, you kind of go, oh God, like, yeah, they really can't plan for any of this. It kind of puts all those gears in, like, puts all that aside, like, because there really isn't any plan, really not much to plan. And maybe I take back, now that we talk out loud here, like the stage 4 stigma, because I do know, like, hey, with this cancer, with the treatments, one day you're up, the next day you're down, and you ride the good days and hopefully have more good days than the bad days. But there is no guarantee of maybe not having, any bad days at all. When I say bad, like, whether it's nausea, fatigue, and, clearly if you're planning and, you're planning stuff, like, you don't know what day you're going to have nausea, or, like, to your point, like, have diarrhea, which you're going to have to stay pretty close to a facility, or else it's going to get like really embarrassing and really messy, and no one wants that, right? So that's got to be like just almost not torture, but like you really have to like take a step back and get really uncomfortable if you're not a planner, because you can't really plan anything.
Yeah, can't plan things. Or I was able to do, when I was doing chemotherapy, well, the day I was told stage 4, I mean, it sounded like I was going to die in 8 months or so. I mean, that's how I felt. It's like, I've got a year. And so I thought, well, and if the last months are really bad and really painful, then I want some good times now. Yeah. So I said to my doctor, I said, can I do, instead of 2-week cycles, can I do 3-week cycles? And he was like, yeah. So when I was doing my chemo, I had like 4 or 5 3-week cycles, so I could go to I could plan to be healthy enough to go to a bluegrass festival or to meet with some friends. So so that worked really well. That was like planning. Wow. And we went away like before my last cycle. So I just had to really talk to the doctor and let them, he knew, and his team knew what was important to me. But since it turns out that I have more than that time, I'm quite sure. But I don't regret taking those 3-week cycles.
So I'm going to throw a curveball here at you. You just gave some like amazing stuff here. There's a piece here that we talk about in this episode with pancreatic cancer on this podcast, and that we talk about often, which is self-advocating. And you, Anna, you may not have mentioned it, or realized it, I should say. You mentioned it. You just hit a home run. So, and this brings me back. There's a reason why I ask these questions. As you said in before, like, hey, I don't feel anything really special about my journey, or, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you said something before, which I noted here. It was like, I kind of have had it pretty little bit easy compared to what I've listened to, and don't feel that my journey's been any special. But what you just gave, when you just talked about, hey, like extending the chemo cycles, like having this dialogue with a physician so that you can do things that were important to you is so freaking amazing and powerful. Because we often talk a lot on this podcast about this self-advocating, and what you just gave was this magical example of self-advocating for you, which is so powerful. Because Anna, I can't tell you how many times we meet patient families and they're reading and they're doing everything that the doctor says. And I'm not advocating here that you should not do that. That's not what I'm saying here, but everyone needs to self-advocate for themselves, because again, you're a survivor and you're living life. Yes, patients have this diagnosis. It is very serious, but the things that are important to you, you should still be able to do that when you feel really good. So having this dialogue, this I call it kind of this warm and open conversation with your clinician, is what everyone should have. Like people have like this people often, I say people, but patients often feel that like they can't ask certain questions to clinicians because they're a clinician. And I always say, hey, if the guy or if the clinician is a jerk, it could be a male or female, go somewhere else. Like if that clinician doesn't come in and say good morning or maybe you don't need that. Everyone's different, but maybe there's answers, there's questions that you have concerning your treatment. Like you said, like, hey, like I really, can we do 3 weeks instead of every 2 weeks? Absolutely. But every patient should feel like they could ask that question to their clinician and not feel like they can't ask that question because that person's their clinician, if that makes sense.
That does. And yeah, well, thank you. Thank you for the compliment. But I did. I asked for other things that I needed and got them. And I asked for a couple of months of just feeling really, really good, not knowing what the capecitabine will do to me.
But that's so powerful, Anna, because it's your life.
Well, that's just me normally. I mean,
no, but I'm telling you, like, this is the stuff that's so great about this podcast. And this is, I want to bring this back, as you said, something that you said, earlier. That's why it's so powerful sharing this. And you have an amazing story, because like not everyone self-advocates, and I'm not trying to, put shame on anyone, but just like there's not a book on how to fight cancer, sharing your journey on self-advocating and why it's so important to you maybe gives the person listening on the other side or watching the courage to do that. Or the example, Anna, which is so powerful, of, hey, you can do that. Like no doctor is going to come in and say, hey, do you want 2 or 3 weeks in between treatment, right? But if you ask the question, just like you did, and you just gave such a powerful example, I guarantee the people on the other side listening and watching are, guess what, now going to ask. And you know what? All you could do is ask. And if the doctor says, hey, no, okay, then that's fine. Then, maybe then the goal is to get to that point where people can get into that area, that space, or that treatment cycle where they have that. And that does give them the opportunity to experience things and to do things that they really want to do. Super powerful, Anna.
Oh, well, thank you. And I've got to say that my oncologist was very happy that I was doing things I wanted to do. He was very, very happy about that, and making sure that I got time to, like the end of my cycle, I had a book club I wanted to talk to, but I knew I needed, X amount of days to feel good. So yeah, I planned my exit at just the right time, so that but that's how I do things. So it's worked out well. And I'm, so the current thing is I'm hoping to not start the capecitabine until after Thanksgiving. So I don't know. I don't know as a diabetic what I can really enjoy for Thanksgiving dinner, but I thought at least if I don't have chemotherapy in my veins at the time, I might have a better Thanksgiving. So we'll see how that goes. But I wouldn't want to extend my chemo-free time if it's not good for my treatment. But I have said, after Thanksgiving would be ideal.
I love it. I love it. I've got a couple questions here left for you, and then we're going to share where our audience can connect with you and follow your journey and learn more. Follow your episode and learn more about your episode. You mentioned your husband a couple times already, and I know we were joking earlier before we hit record about your last name and everything, but what is it been, and I know you can't speak for your husband here, but I guess my question for you is having that support, because you mentioned, he's been a big part of, just the planning and everything and having him there. And I often say, like, no one should ever fight this alone. It's always important to have like a group of people and at least one person there for you. So let's talk a little bit about that with the support your husband has given for you, and give him a shout out here.
Well, we've been married, I think, 28 years now, and we got married when we were 40 or so, 39. So it was a good meeting. And I've known for a long time that he was just the salt of the earth and just a great guy. But he's just, he's totally devastated. If any couple thinks about who might die first, you usually think that the husband's going to die first. And frankly, I didn't plan for it, but it's like I knew that was a great possibility that I would live without him for a long time. But now when he's got the opposite, it's devastating for him. But he's just been there. He wants to take me to everything, and he's there, and he carries my I'm going to cry, so I'm crying now. But I've seen other people cry, so it's okay. So, he carries my bag and he drives me into San Francisco and back, which is not fun. He's still working. And so he's balancing that also. But it's, we're just a team. We don't have children, so we have a very tight marriage, and we're just a team. And this is what the team does right now.
Thank you for sharing. Someone listening or watching this episode, given what you've gone through since the original diagnosis there with the bladder cancer, and I know this is always kind of a hard or loaded question, in the sense, like, what advice would you give that person? And not necessarily like one thing, and there's no right or wrong to this, but again, given your personal experience, what are some things that you would say to that person, in terms of maybe things to avoid, things to definitely take advantage of, or to do, given the experience you've gone through over the last couple years?
Well, it's really only been like 18 months or so. It's 18, maybe even 16 months. The big thing is, don't think you have to be a statistic. You do not have to be a statistic. Initially, when I got the pancreatic diagnosis, I felt good that I was a statistic, because I had heard the 80% cannot have surgery, 20% can have surgery. So that 20% is like 12,000 in the United States. So I was like, I'm lucky. I'm one of the 12,000. And I still feel that way. But when the numbers start turning against me, I'm like, those are not my statistics. And I don't want to buy into that. So I think we have to be selective on what we choose to believe coming to us. My advice also would be, if you don't have a hospital or a doctor that has my chart, or some online way to connect to your doctor, if they're not sending you email, if you're not getting text messages from them, you really need to do that, because I do so much of my communication with the whole team through my chart. And I mean, just this morning, they were trying to schedule things for me. So I think that's one of the greatest tool, and I'm certain a lot of people don't use it or they don't have access to it. But I think it is part of my team, because just being able to communicate with people from my laptop or my phone if I choose to. So that's really good. One of the things, and I don't know if this is controversial, but I'm very careful about letting people who don't have pancreatic cancer tell me what to do, who have cancer but not pancreatic cancer. I just feel that this is so special. It's so individual. It's that it's its own world, and a lot of things that other cancer survivors of other types of cancers have told me, I just kind of blank out because I just don't find it very helpful. Is that common? Have you heard that before?
I think you're 120% right on that. I often tell people, like, is it common? Let me answer your question. You're maybe one of the few people that have brought that up, but it's such an amazing point, because I think, this cancer is so different. My mom's a 2-time breast cancer survivor, and like, I'm very familiar with breast and very familiar with pancreatic cancer, but they are like 180 degrees different from each other, right? Like, they are so different. And I often hear people where this comes in is, I got put into through my local hospital support group, but I can't find anyone in there with pancreatic cancer. Mm-hmm. There's someone with lung, someone with breast cancer, someone with lymphoma. And, it's just very difficult because, like, no one knows pancreatic cancer. So the questions that I have, based on my disease, the guy with lymphoma doesn't deal with like the GI issues, right? So yeah, I think that's really, really critical and really, really important piece here. And that's where I always feel, I guess, to be like selfish here, like, our podcast, like we've had other survivors on from other cancers, but 99% of the episodes, are people that have had pancreatic cancer, and have gone through that cancer specific and can talk to people. And I think, I always tell people from an advocacy standpoint, like, hey, if you're with a general oncologist, you got to go see a specialist who just deals with pancreatic cancer day in, day out, because it's so different and so specialized, and everyone reacts different to treatments. And, as we were saying, we had episodes where people, did 87 rounds of FOLFIRINOX, which is different because some people, I've known people that do 2 rounds and, they just can't physically continue. So that's where I feel you are 120% accurate when you say that. And it's such a important piece here, because I think that is critical. I think it is to have people that you can reach out to that have gone through pancreatic cancer. And I'm not trying to also say like, hey, other cancers don't matter, but pancreatic,
not at all.
Yeah. Pancreatic cancer to me matters more than any cancer. And, I always say that just, given my personal experience, and everyone's personal experience is different, and we just got to respect those, right? Those differences. And I'm not trying to throw down any other cancers, but, hey, we focus on pancreatic cancer. But I do think, to get back to your question, Anna, it is so important. I couldn't agree with you more that if you're battling through that you talk to someone. And, we have a network, we're going to share your information here. We've had plenty of guests come on and share their contact information. There's other groups that do connect, survivors with fighters and, alike. And so there's many ways to find that. I always say, if there's a will, there's a way. There's a way to find that. My last question here, and as I always say, this is also another loaded question, and there's no right or wrong to this, Anna, but given your experience in the episode you've been in, how do you define the term pancreatic cancer? What is that definition for you?
Before I had it, I would have just said it's a bitch, because my understanding of it was you got 4 months to live. I mean, that I didn't know anybody directly who had it or died from it, but from the reading I had done, that was how I felt before I had my diagnosis. And now that I have my diagnosis, it again is it's serious and it's life-changing, but you can live with it. I mean, it's definitely, something you can live with. I know it's not a very profound definition, but I don't think it's, it doesn't have to, maybe the definition should be, it doesn't have to be a bitch. It's all the way you look at it. It doesn't have to be a bitch. It's kind of like my definition of a miracle is I'm willing to look at something differently. And you can look at pancreatic cancer differently. It doesn't have to kill you in the first year or second year or third year or fifth year. And I think your podcast has shown that. And I've really appreciated watching the other survivors and warriors telling their tales.
It's powerful stuff, Anna. I want to thank you for being our guest and for sharing so many golden nuggets here. And I go back to something you just said, and in a second, we're going to share where our audience can connect with you. But, you said, I didn't, and I'm paraphrasing here, I'm just putting in my own words, like you didn't have like a special story, but like we've just given out like 3 amazing things that usually, in a 49, we've been recording here for 49 minutes. Like we're lucky if we get like 2, but you just gave 3. And so you have an amazing story, and I want to thank you. And you truly are very, very special. So, and I'm being sincere and honest when I'm saying that with this, and you have an amazing ability to share that. So I want to thank you for allowing us the opportunity to share your journey, your episode with pancreatic cancer. For our audience listening and watching at home, where's the best place? Maybe someone may have a question for you. They want to reach out to you. Maybe they're a reader as well. And maybe that's just to talk about books or historical fiction. Where's the best place for the audience to reach out to you?
I think probably Instagram. I am a writer. I am selling a book, and I'm selling the books of other friends. So a lot of what I do on Instagram is about literature and, genre fiction, really. So I don't post a lot about my pancreas because I don't feel, I kind of don't want to mix it, but I am available there. So if you want to reach out to me, and I don't remember exactly what my Instagram is, but if we go to my okay, because if we go to my website that has my Instagram or Facebook, Messenger is good, and I'm really glad to share what I know. Unfortunately, one of our friends has pancreatic cancer now, and she's also going to UCSF, and I've been trying to, prepare her for what's going to be going on there. So I'm kind of an old hand at it.
And so your Instagram is real easy. It's just similar to your website. So your website's Anna, A-N-A, Brazil, B-R-A-Z-I-L. And your Instagram is the same as Anna, A-N-A Brazil, B-R-A-Z-I-L. Awesome.
Yeah. I will be posting a lot during November.
Cool.
For pancreatic awareness, cancer
I
awareness.
went and followed you, so I love it.
Yeah, I will post a lot for there, and I also post in May for bladder cancer awareness month because I'm still watching out for that.
Awesome, Anna. Thank you for being a guest on the Project Purple podcast.
Dino, thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Project Purple podcast. If you like today's episode, please share this episode and follow the Project Purple podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. That is a wrap of another episode of the Project Purple podcast. Thanks for listening. And until next time, please be safe.